Hello everyone, this is CJ Novo 992 and today we're back with another brand new video. Today's a video as the ball started rolling towards next season and everyone's talking about the signings, who's going to be the next again signing, everyone's excited, there's signing news everywhere. I thought today would be the day that me and we sit down and talk like we do every single year and review the signings for last season. Now of course this one's going to be a little bit different from the last 4 times we've done this over the last 4 years on this channel, as this is going to be the first time we've ever talked about a season that ended early. But it's tradition here on the channel, so we won't break that for nothing. Nah. And before we actually get to the 12 players that we signed last season and say if they're a hit or a miss, I know every year I do this, people always jump in and say, we didn't win nothing, so everyone's a failure, but that's made of a team-orientated thing. We're actually looking back on the players that we signed last season and judging them individually on how they got on. Was it a good transfer? Was it a good bit of business for a football club? That's what we're looking to. We're taking the good and the bad. We're taking everything into consideration for today's list because we want to talk about football things. That's what we do here on this channel. Yes, we can be utterly negative and just say, aye, we never won on, so everyone's a failure, but where's the give and go with that? Where's the football talk? I want to talk about Rangers. That's why we do this video. So feel free to dive into the comment section and play along as we go through these 12 players and say if they're hits or misses, because I look forward to see what your thoughts and opinions are on the players. But without any further ado, we've got so much stats to get into. Let's dive in to the very first player. And to start off, let's work our way from the back to the front then, shall we? And start off with one of the centre halves we signed last season. It's of course the big sweet himself, Mr. Philippe Hollander. And I remember the video we did here on the channel, remember the reaction as well. People, including myself, was kind of going, what we just signed a centre half for a lot of money for? Connor Goldson and Katic look like they're playing amazing with each other. We've no longer got Joe Worrell at the football club sort of breaking up that partnership. Now the season started, Goldson, Katic, the partnership looks strong. But after seeing Hollander finally make his debut and get a couple of games under his belt, we went, that's why we signed him. He's actually really good. And let's not forget, that was after arriving unfit and without a pre-season, being about 6 weeks behind the rest of the team. That's what Gerrard said when Hollander was signed. So we had to wait a while to see him. But like I said there, whenever we saw him play, we went, okay, we have a player in there. And that partnership with Connor Goldson, I know this is a bit controversial, but to me, that is our best defensive partnership. Goldson and Hollander, that is the two for me, and we saw that just blossom slightly for the short period of time that they had. Were they absolutely perfect all the time? No, but did we see potential in the two of them playing together? For me, absolutely. Just look at the likes of the clean sheet versus Feyenoord and the clean sheet versus Porto. The two of them were absolutely outstanding and they matched each other and brought the best out of each other. But that partnership was obviously broken up shortly after, and Hollander and Goldson weren't able to build on that bright start to their centre-back partnership as Hollander suffered a serious injury and didn't play another minute. So that left him with 17 games played, 9 clean sheets in those 17 games. By the way, very impressive to me. 2 goals and he chipped in with 1 assist as well. And before we wrap up and move on to the next player, am I sitting here saying Hollander was the second coming and an absolute world beater for every second he played for Rangers? No, of course I'm not. But during his short spell in his first season at Rangers without a pre-season, did he show enough that there is something there? For me, absolutely, lad. So I'm going to consider his transfer a hit on that basis, and I look forward to seeing him next season with that pre-season under his belt. Now moving on to the next centre-half we signed last season by the name of Big Glorious George, sometimes known as George Edmondson. Now unlike Hollander, George Edmondson was signed and we all understood the deal, because this is deals now we've wanted for a very long time. Go ahead and sign young, talented players to long-term contracts and develop and grow them in to first-team players, and in my personal opinion, that's exactly what we have in George Edmondson. And I think that statement saying he is a future first team player is backed up by the fact that some people think the man should be starting more games right frickin' now, because he is young, he's powerful, and more importantly, he's got a bit of pace, something we're not really blessed in at the centre-back spot, but he certainly ticks those boxes, and I'm sure as time goes on he'll continue to knock at the first team door, because look at the performance versus Braga. He's certainly got the ability right now. It's just finding the consistency and sharpening up on some of the other things that he's not necessarily great at right now. So I am very excited about the future of George Edmondson at Rangers Football Club, but even in saying that, talking about the future, he still managed 15 games last season for Rangers, getting involved in 8 clean sheets, scoring twice and grabbing an assist. Not bad for a player that wasn't expected to play too much in his first season at Rangers Football Club, which leads me to my answer on this one. Is it a success? Is it a hit? Is it a miss? I think this one's a hit as well, ladies and gentlemen. 2 for 2 so far. How long will that continue? Probably not long. And that unfortunately transitions me away from the defenders and up to the midfield, as we have a very packed Rangers midfield to break down in today's video. So let's start off with the wingers then, shall we? And start off with maybe the most high profile player we brought in early on in the transfer window, and that was of course Mr. Shea Ojo. And this one's really hard for me because when we signed Ojo, his expectations were absolutely sky high, right? But after his first couple of appearances, we're gone, you know what, he might reach these expectations and might even go further because he looked incredible in his first couple of games. However, unfortunately, that changed after about 5 to 6 weeks at the football club as he started to phase in and out of games before falling away completely towards the second half of it. Leaving him with 35 games in total, 16 of them being off the bench, by the way, but still he chipped in with 5 goals and 7 assists as well. But I wish I could sit here and say it was a hit because I wanted him to be a success. You saw the class, especially on his way out the door, where it didn't quite work out. It didn't reach the heights, but you saw his classy message. He thanked the fans. He said he's got memories there that will stay with him for the rest of his days. That's just pure and utter class. And I'll be honest, I've said numerous times on this channel, and I was slaughtered for it numerous times, I didn't think it was half as bad as a lot of people actually made it, but it wasn't good enough for me to sit here and say it was a success. So that's going to be the first miss of the season. Moving on to the next winger we signed last season. This is of course going to be Brandon Barkaran. Listen, I'm not going to sit here and beat a dead horse. I think we all know it did not work in any shape or form with Barker, unfortunately. This one is going to be a miss. I'm just going to keep this one short and sweet. He played 12 games. He got 1 goal at his time as Rangers, but the majority of his time was used from the bench. It was a bit of a head scratcher when we signed him, and after seeing a couple of his performances, it just did not make any sense, besides the one game versus Porto where I thought he was absolutely brilliant. He worked his arse off. He tracked left to right. He was all over the park running and fighting for the badge, and I thought, right, that was the performance. Capture that, son, and go with it. But unfortunately, it never really worked out. And again, he was one that sort of just fell away, nowhere near the first team, and only used occasionally from the bench. The next winger we here to talk about is going to be Jake Hasting, and this one is very, very difficult, right? Because he was signed very much like the Edmonton deal to be brought into the football club, not expected to dive right into the first team. Unlike the George Edmondson deal, however, it was always the plan to use Jake Hasting, get him signed in, and then loan him back out to get more minutes under his belt, because apart from that 6-month spell at Motherwell where he was absolutely outstanding, scoring goals from fun, cutting into the right hand side and ripping shots, that was about it. That's all he played at a top level. So it was always following the plan to bring him in, loan him and develop him that way. But we all know how the Rotherham loan went, especially if you watch my loan review series, by the way. He started off very, very well, scoring goals for fun, but then fell away for the setup and ended with him coming up the road early in January. So I don't know how to class this one because he only made 2 appearances for Rangers, playing less than 85 minutes. But I guess if you look at the Rotherham loan, the fact that it was ended early, you'd have to consider that a miss. But it seems as if we're following the same plan. He's still got a long-term deal. I'm expecting him to go back out and loan, try and get more minutes under his belt and develop as a football player. So we might throw a wee asterisk next to this one and say miss until he's been given a chance to either succeed or fail. Next up, you guessed it, it's another winger we signed last season. This is getting absolutely mental to break down, but this one is again another free transfer, just like the Jake Hasting deal, except this one was signed from Kilmarnock. We're obviously talking about the one, the only Jordan Jones. And it's weird to think of where we are now, because Jordan Jones started the season off pretty well, that a lot of people was actually forgetting. He was one of our best players for the first 5-6 weeks of the season. Let's not forget, it was his moment in magic that got us into the European group stages versus Legia, with a fantastic late run in the game, beating his man and whipping a fantastic cross that big Alfredo Morelos was there. He smashed in the last minute. That was him at his best. However, we can't mention that without mentioning this is also the guy just a couple of weeks later that went ahead and done that stupid challenge versus Celtic that not only got himself sent off, but getting himself injured for the next 4 months. I'm swaying left and right with this one, ladies and gentlemen. What's your thoughts on Jordan Jones? Was his transfer to Rangers a success? I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to maybe cheap out here and be a wee bit cheap, but I'm going to say a small hit with this one. And the reason I say small hit, it was a free transfer, right? He's not on a lot of wages, and he made a hell of a lot more money for the football club than he cost the football club with that moment of magic versus Legia to get us into the European group stages. We saw flashes of promise from Jordan Jones. He's definitely got the attributes. He can play in our league. He's played here for a long time, but I'm expecting him to kick it up a notch. I think he deserves a second chance at the football club, so I'm going to say a very, very small hit for Jordan Jones so far. It's time at Rangers. Next up, we have yet another winger to talk about, but thankfully for me and this is the last winger we signed last season. It is the man, the myth, the Rhine Kent. And Kent obviously arrived on transfer deadline day for the big bucks, ladies and gentlemen. And just like our other big bucks signing, Hollander, he arrived unfit and obviously didn't get a pre-season with the club. And if that wasn't bad enough, in his very first appearance for Rangers, ends up pulling up and missing another 4 weeks of action, falling behind the squad and the rest of the league in terms of fitness. However, despite all that, he still managed to play 33 games, scoring 8 goals and grabbing 4 assists as well. Now granted, they are not the best stats, but stats never tell you everything in football, ladies and gentlemen, and especially in the case of Ryan Kent. He offers you so much more than just goals and assists. Now granted, I'd love a hell of a lot more goals, and I think he's capable of a lot more goals and assists, but what you get with Kent is someone who is willing to track back and put a fit in, who's willing to take the ball in tight areas, who's willing to drag the team forward, and who never ever hides. And that's a trait that not many of the Rangers players have had now for a very, very long time. As shocking and as sad as that is to say, it's true. Kent always willing to get the ball and always willing to take the numerous cheap free kicks he wins us per game. I know he's a whipping boy for some, but never ever for me. I rate him very, very highly. I think he's a massive part of the team, and I'm not going to hold his transfer fee against him like some people do, because by the way, not only did that goal versus Braga pay for himself, but it paid for a hell of a lot more as well, by the way. Hello, Hadji. So I could be sitting here all day talking about Ryan Kent. You know how I feel about this laddie, but because this video is going to be so long, I have to try and keep it short, as frustrating as that is talking about every single player. Was it absolutely balls out 10 out of 10 all season long last season? No. Obviously no, but did he offer a hell of a lot more positives than negatives last season? For me, absolutely. And with that being said, we are now officially done and dusted talking about the winger position. Now it's time to dive into the centre of the park then, shall we? And first up we have Joe Rebo, who played winger for the majority of the season. Can't be arsed. All joking and that aside, Joe Rebo obviously joined Rangers Football Club on a free transfer from Charlton. Hashtag Boyer is still greeting. It's a long-term deal and it was a brilliant bit of business then, and a year later, spoiler alert for the old hit and misses, it's still a bit of brilliant business in my personal opinion. The lad's turning heads at international level, and he's already showed us in games how good he is right now, and just a little taster of how good this guy could be in the future. In his first season in Scottish football, he played 48 games, scoring 9 goals, one including a simply incredible goal versus Braga that doesn't get anywhere near the respect that it does. That's Messi that goes about and does that. That's everywhere, but because it's Joe Rebo, because it's Rangers, it's just kind of like, no bother, and it's forgot about. Well, I refuse to forget about that goal for Joe Rebo. Absolutely top notch, and the man also chipped in with a very, very impressive 8 assists as well throughout the season. Not a bad first season in Scottish football for Joe Rebo, considering he didn't spend the majority of it playing in his best position or his most suited position, which is obviously centre of the park. He played a lot on that right wing. Next up, I'm not sure if this one really counts, but he is technically a signing last summer, even though he'd done it the season before. It's of course the man, Stephen Davis. And it's got to be said, Stephen Davis was strolling the league right up to the winter break. He looked absolutely incredible, and as much as I praised him before the break, I was also going after him quite heavily in the second half, because he was one of the guys I looked at and went, what's went wrong? Rallied the team, and I was very, very disappointed. But again, he's not the only one. That spread throughout the majority of the squad in the second half of the season. But if we combine and we take a step back, we look at everything, you have to say, free transfer, Davis coming back up the road, even though he obviously spent a wee bit of time in loan where it wasn't an out-and-out success. You've got to look at this season for me and his transfer to Rangers as a hit. And I think given the fact that I think Stephen Davis's transfer to Rangers was a hit, is backed up by the next player we're going to speak about by the name of Andy King, who, like Stephen Davis, came from a Premier League club, but quite a drastic difference on how it turned out. It was a head scratcher when we signed him, and I wasn't surprised when we cut him loose. This one is of course going to be a miss. He played 5 games in total for Rangers, and in those 5 games, I'm not trying to be wide, I'm not trying to be overly critical, I can't think of one moment I went, there's a player there. There's that. It just never worked out, unfortunately, for Andy King. Seems like a fantastic, great guy, but it did not work at Rangers, and I'm going to say this one is a miss. I think we'll all agree with that, considering the fact that his loan was ended early and he was sent back to Leicester. Now it's time to move a wee bit further forward in the old midfield then, shall we, and speak about the boy wonder himself, Mr. Hadji, who, yes, I know, also played wing. Let that sink in. What we've already talked about, we've got another guy that we played in the wing. What were we doing last season? But I'll keep this one short and sweet, because if you're actually watching to this point in today's video, you are a true channel legend and you know how I feel about Hadji. I adore the ground that this man works on, and what he showed us in his short time at Rangers when the Rangers team was not clicking at all was fantastic. But can you imagine dropping that creativity in a Rangers team that is clicking? Oh, that will be absolutely beautiful. This one is a massive, massive hit. The loan was a hit, and I'm sure I'll be sitting here in a year's time saying the transfer permanent for Hadji will be a hit as well. The 11th player that we're here to talk about is going to be Greg Stewart. And again, calling back to something I've said a couple of times throughout today's video, it's a bit of a tough one with Greg Stewart, because I was one of those guys when he was coming on and changing games, like, give him more minutes, he's changing games, he's taking the limited opportunities, let's see more and more. But when we did actually see him start, it kind of faded away, seemed much better as an impact sub. And that leads us to his season stats, where he played 25 games in total, however 18 of them was substitute appearances. That's madness. But in those games he managed 3 goals and 5 assists during his limited time on the park. Now again, the argument could be he should have got more minutes instead of likes of Ojo and Barker, who around that time was just unfortunately on that downward spiral. But the debate is there about Greg Stewart. What happens to him next season? Me personally, I think unfortunately his time is done at the football club. I think the game he started where nothing happened at all and he was substituted very, very early in that game sort of leans towards Gerrard tried to give him a chance and it never ever worked out. But I struggle with this one, because did he change the game as much as the next player we're going to talk about? And for that, I'm going to say no. So I'm going to unfortunately say, as much as I rate him and I like the guy himself, Greg Stewart, I'm going to say his transfer to Rangers was a miss. And that leads us to the last but not least player on this list. And I've intentionally left the two of them like this, because Greg Stewart, sub. Some games he grabbed his opportunity, especially earlier on, but as the sub appearances went, as the season went on, the impact was found lesser and lesser. Well, this guy came on nearly every single game and he changed it drastically. I am of course talking about the man who won interview of the year when he signed for Rangers on loan, basically burning every spoon in Edinburgh with his comments about signing for Rangers. But as fantastic as that interview was, it wasn't that bad on the park either. As we've said, he changed games drastically every time he came on. I mean, everyone talks about Rebo's goal, rightly so, fantastic, Hadji's performance versus Braga, but the real first spark to change that home game versus Braga was the introduction of Kamberi. Now, because his season was ended early, he only played 9 games and only scored 1 goal and only grabbed 2 assists. However, his role was more go in there and change it. We aren't playing well right now. Go in there and change it. Greg Stewart came on in the majority of the games when we were sort of winning and chipped in with a couple of goals and looked good, but when he was called upon to change games that was not working, that's where he started to falter, and that's why I call him a miss. Well, as I've already explained, this guy done the exact opposite, and I've spoken enough about the laddie. I think he was a hit at Rangers, and I hope to see him there next season. And with all that being said, we are now officially done and dusted with today's video. That is the 12 signings of Rangers broken down and discussed in terms of hit or a miss. Please get involved down there in the comment section below. That is why the channel exists. It's for this conversation, it's for this debate, and I look forward to seeing what your thoughts and opinions are. Before we wrap up today's video, I need to thank you for watching, if you are watching to this part in today's video. I have been CJ Nova 92. Take care of yourselves, look after each other, and I'll see you in the next video, and bye.